No, it's the angry tiger mom who is the hero. This is the tension. This show does not make anybody watching this from a cultural perspective right or wrong.
Until next time, may the thread be with you.
How dare you? Delete that.
Let me go to the single shot, Stephen. Ding dong, the witch is dead. That's what I have to say about this episode of The Acolyte. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to Geeky Stoics. This is the video podcast that talks about all things Star Wars and philosophy and much more. I'm Riley. He's Steven. What's up, man?
I am trying to figure out that episode that we just watched.
Yep.
What was that, episode 6?
7.
Episode 7 of The
One
Acolyte.
more to go.
Oh, man. So I didn't learn a lot from this episode of The Acolyte. Obviously, this episode is a multiple perspectives approach to a mystery. Like at the beginning, we were trying to figure out how this witch coven died. What were the circumstances of Master Soul taking in Osha and the background with May? So we've been sort of unspooling this story. And every time he's about to tell Osha what happened, someone stun guns him, knocks him out, or lights a fire, and Master Soul never gets to tell the story. But this episode gave us a depiction of Master Soul that I thought was incredibly unflattering.
Tell me more. Because listen, guys, we're not beating around the bush. Like, we are getting straight into episode 7 of The Acolyte. That's what this episode is. Who needs preamble? I want your hot take, Steven. Tell me.
So before we start talking about Star Wars theories, because boy, I have one or two that relate to a certain episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Let's talk about philosophy and meaning and what's going on in this episode. So my main takeaway was that this episode and this whole story is about agency. It is about the choice over your future and who has a role in protecting you, who has a role in guiding you in your future. Is it your parents?
Is it family or an institution?
That's right. Is it family or an institution? That's not a debate that we're having across the nation at all. This show is very relevant. I mean, and it's right in your face, but you could miss it if you weren't looking for it. That this show is about two girls growing up in a family who have very different senses of identity and connection to the family, and two parents who feel very differently about the agency that their child should have in making a choice that takes them away from the family altogether and lets them leave. And it's very unclear. It's mind twisting who we're supposed to see as the good guy or the bad guy in that situation. Because the Ithorian mother, the one with the horns, the angry one, the one who needs to smile more, she's the only one who's willing to be tiger mom for her kids.
Right?
And you hate her because she's kind of like she's nasty and mean, and she hates the Jedi, right?
And very Russian, yes.
But she's fighting for her children and not letting this institution come in and take them away. But we like the witch coven mother, the black woman who is kind, listens to Osha and accepts her truth and all that kind of stuff. And I know you want to be a Jedi, even though, how do you even know anything about the Jedi and what it means to be a Jedi? And how on earth do you as a child get to make the decision to leave home and never come back with people who you have never met? She's cast as the good guy, but it wasn't until right now, as I am saying it, that I'm going, no, it's the angry tiger mom who is the hero. She's actually fighting for her kids. So what do you think? I've gone on about that a lot.
No, this is great points all around, Stephen. I think the complexity of this episode comes in its in the way that it really doesn't paint anyone in a good light. In fact, it's the narrative. I was expecting this episode to sort of be the aha moment that we've been craving. Let's be honest. If you've stuck around this long, this is the episode that was supposed to sort of reveal all in the flashback. It was another of the 8 episodes. 2 of them are these giant flashback moments, and I think the biggest question is how did the witches die? And now we have an answer to that. I mean, but yet we don't have a clear answer to it. And this is the thing. We are literally coming out of this podcast, about 5.5 minutes after the episode just aired. So we're this hot, fresh takes. Unless I missed something, Stephen, the implication was that Indara,
yeah.
Trinity. Anyway, Trinity
from the Matrix.
Thank you. But the whole here's the deal. Trinity, because that's what I'm going to call her. She essentially, it's implied that she was the cause, if not the willing cause, of the death of all the witches. She done murdered all the witches, is what I'm saying, Stephen. Is that what I was supposed to take away here?
I mean, honestly, I have no idea, Riley, because some of the editing in this episode I still found to be puzzling. So
it was, right?
A Tiger Mom, I assume she's actually alive. She's still out there. She didn't die in the massacre. Also, I did not get the impression whatsoever that Indara killed that coven of witches by kicking them out of the mind of Kelnaka, the Wookiee. I just figured they passed out. Right?
Like all fainted, yeah.
Yeah, which would mean like they're alive too. I guess, question mark. So I kind of feel like this whole coven is still alive.
It really some of this comes down to the editing, because they're definitely, to me it's very obvious that they're dead in the end, like both in the previous flashback episode where we see all the bodies, and then here at the end we do see all the bodies again. I mean, maybe there's some extra witch magic, similar, not unlike when we saw the Night Sisters in the Ahsoka series. Like maybe there's some zombification thing going on here, but it does seem to me that like pretty final. The way the editing went led me to be like, there's some connection between her severing the connection of the witches, possessing, quite literally possessing Kelnaka. And then boom, the next thing they're all dead. And I was
Riley, can I take us back one step though? Because
yeah,
I want to get your take on what I was saying about agency and like what this show is saying about choice and kids and parents and their role, because I feel like this is the story. Master Soul's fixation on Osha is a little weird. And Indara calls him out on it. And the elephant in the room here is schools, the relationship between teachers and the kids, and parents, and what goes on in class. Like that's the elephant in the room.
That's the obvious parallel. Yeah,
right beneath the surface here. And Master Soul as like the institutional teacher who's just like, I've met this kid one time and I love her and I want to make her mine and make her my Padawan. I feel as if she's meant to be my Padawan. And he's like, goes over and above and beyond to make it so.
I mean,
what's your take on this?
The first thing I think of is if I think about, and because listen, we're going to talk some Phantom Menace, but there's a comparison right there. That's a little bit like what you could accuse Qui-Gon of the same thing in his encounter with Avergence in the Force. When he encounters Anakin, he has this strange like attachment in a way, to the point where he makes the bet, but in the end when he has to kind of choose, fate chooses Anakin and not his mother. In the same way Soul chose, and I think there's some parallels in the story, Osha over May, and it's very explicit. You're right. He says like, I feel this connection. I feel like she's meant to be my Padawan. It's a very sort of living force kind of thing. In the Phantom Menace, it's more about the prophecy of the chosen one. He is the chosen one. You must see it. Like that was Qui-Gon's argument.
Yeah.
In this case, it's just like, I feel like her fate is entwined with mine. So that in that way, it's very Star Warsy. But in this case of this fairly on the nose parallel with the current cultural commentary around the role of parents, children, and institutions, like it does read a little different. And to answer your question, I don't know that it is a little odd the way it comes off. It does kind of paint the Jedi in a bad light. But I will say this.
But also it redeemed them in a way.
The
right?
intentions here, especially with like, I think it's fairly obvious that the children were in danger. Like, I don't think this was a safe environment, and I think that they were right to have the instinct that they needed some kind of saving, because you literally see, as much as, you know, she's the tiger mom who's defending her child, she very much like tells her child to embrace the dark side and anger and hatred and
Violence.
go forth and murder everybody.
Yeah, she like encourages the kid to like close the place off. No one goes in or out.
That's like child soldier crap right there.
I mean, incredibly toxic, like Waco cultist, vibe here. And again, like this is the tension. This show does not make anybody watching this from a cultural perspective right or wrong. It's incredibly muddy. It's incredibly morally confusing. And it's designed as such. It's so clearly designed as such. Even what you just mentioned about how Soul is his connection to wanting to make Osha his Padawan and like save her from this family, which Osha does say, like, she doesn't want to be part of the coven. She wants to be a Jedi. So great. But Indara also says, the Jedi Council do not condone this. They think we've already gone too far. We should not be involved this deeply. And so any of the cultural criticisms of the Jedi as baby stealers, like all this kind of stuff, colonialists, colonialist and their attitudes about collecting children and cracking down on witches and all this kind of stuff. The Jedi Council didn't condone what was going on there. It was Master Soul and Torben who took it too far. Torben, because he's homesick and just wanted to get out.
That was a weird, of all the motivations that you're trying to pick.
Yeah.
Although if there's anything that this series has done very poorly, it's like character motivations. They're very different. At least we knew what his motivation was. That was something that, like, we knew why he was vulnerable. He just wanted to go. I want to go home.
I want to go home.
Sucks
I'm
here.
gonna hop on my speeder and ride away. But let's talk about the Virgins. Okay, so
yeah, we got to.
The Virgins in the Force. The first time we hear this is from Qui-Gon Jinn in episode 1. He senses a Virgins in the Force. You think it's this boy? Mace Windu to him. He believes in episode 1 that Anakin Skywalker is a Virgins in the Force, meaning this high centrality of the presence of the Force, almost as if it is like a portal, like a living organism of the Force. Okay. That's what a Virgins is. It is like the beating heart of the Force in real life. The dark side cave on Dagobah is a Virgins in the Force. The dark side pit on Octo is a Virgins in the Force. Mortis. And when Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and Anakin transport into that's a Virgins. Anakin also is that, as a product of virgin birth. Or divine, what are we supposed to say?
Immaculate conception.
Immaculate conception. Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. But that's what they mention here is the planet was dead. The Jedi believed and understood the planet to have been killed in a hyperspace disaster, which is the subject of the High Republic.
Book nice little High Republic shout out. That's about the extent, by the way, of the connection to the High Republic that this whole series has had. Is this one little mention
and the yellow robes. But I haven't read those books. I tried. I didn't really enjoy them. But that's what it's all about: is these hyperspace disasters. And this planet was dead, but now it is alive. And Torben is like, well, so what? So plants are growing. But Indara very rightly points out, like, this planet is alive and it shouldn't be. And that also is what led to the birth of these children. And we still don't know how they were conjured.
Yeah, but man, that look, we got a bit of a knowing look from Tiger Mom. Darth
Plagueis the Wise. This planet is an experiment by Darth Plagueis the Wise. That's what's going on here. He is warming up for
what was the whole
impregnating Shmi Skywalker?
What was the whole help me out. What was the whole idea of what was the phrase they used? The identical spirit where like the same consciousness was split in two.
That I don't know. I recall what you're saying. Basically, they did a blood test on Osha and May and determined that they not just have the same gene sequencing pattern, but like even twins would have some distinguishing marks. They have none. They are literally the same person split in two. And we're talking about like the darkness and light of a person. May is angry, fearful, clingy. Osha is just sweet. She's so gosh darn good natured. It's like it's almost unnatural, the divide between the two. But everybody knows this from having siblings. This is just a thing that happens. You can come from the same bloodline, you can come from the same household and just be completely two different people. And so this vergence in the Force, this is, again, the path to Star Wars Episode 1. I just feel very strongly that what we're seeing here is a warm-up act by Darth Plagueis or his master Tenebris. They're studying the ability to create life. And somebody is behind the scenes at this witch coven. And I think the somebody is a him. I think it involves Kamir, the stranger. And I think it's going to take us towards Plagueis and the rise of Palpatine.
Yeah, which makes, I mean, it's convenient, like everything else in the writing of this show. It's convenient, but I want to know if there's more to the Vergence other than it's the result of a hyperspace disaster. That really doesn't like tie the.
No. It's not the result of a hyperspace disaster. The hyperspace disaster caused the death of the planet. The Vergence is inexplicable.
It's I guess it's evidenced because of the death of the planet. Yeah, you're right. But
yeah, the Vergence is evidenced because the planet was dead. Yeah.
Maybe it's the yellow tree of Gondor, as I'm calling it.
The tree of Gondor on Brindock. Again, this episode just didn't really have a lot, but it did continue to raise some more questions.
Raised a lot of questions. I guess what the answer we have to is, in some ways, the Soul's creepier than we thought, and yet the Jedi overall seemed to have much. This version of the story shines a much more flattering light on the Jedi's intentions for interfering. They had good reason to fear for the safety of the children. I think, especially, and you know what the clearest evidence is not anything, is specifically what May says about Mama says, what was the phrase? Like it was an equivalent of like, yep, everybody's got to be sacrificed. And maybe that's the connection. That's the death of all the witches is a ceremonial portion of that ascension.
I mean, that was one of the unanswered questions I had written down was, why did they have that sidebar conversation about how could children lead the coven? You're only kids. There's a sacrifice that's required. So it's almost like, are you telling me all the adult witches are about to die so that y'all can lead the coven? Again, this kind of goes back into the real world, this meta conversation about the wisdom of the children. How much are we supposed to listen to and trust the intuition of children when they are telling us about their feelings, their senses of identity, their confusion? Or are parents and adults supposed to instill upon children boundaries, virtues, truth, and the word no, right? And higher ideas. There's this huge tension here that we already have unspooled in the beginning about like which one of the moms is kind of like the bad guy or the good guy here.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, though, it's like, who has the right to raise these children? And Indara says in the very first episode of The Acolyte, when they come to the coven and they break in the middle of the night and the children are revealed to them, she says, you cannot deny that the Jedi have a right to test these children. I assume that that's under Republic law.
Yeah, which I mean, This
They
is
say they're
5
not in the
seconds after
Republic.
I was gonna say 5
Yeah.
seconds after she said that we're not in the Republic. But she
Yeah.
did say with your permission, which was reinforced in this episode. Again, the Jedi not exactly being the baby stealers that
Yeah.
would blame
Yeah.
them to
I
be.
thought it was kind of lame when she was like, with your permission, of course, because she just said we have a right to do it.
Yeah.
But that woman, I don't know her name, the Ithorian, she birthed the children.
Mm.
They're her children. You don't get to test them without her consent.
And Stephen, I think
You don't get to take them away without her consent. And it is about rights. That's one of these really relevant discussions that fans are having in their own real lives around the dinner table, and it's playing out in Star Wars in a very real way.
Yeah, and it's I appreciate the I appreciate the grit and care that the character shows. Although I think I'm going to be the Star Wars species nerd for a second. I'm trying to remember her name. Zabrak.
Zabrak.
She's got the horny horns, but yeah, no, she seems to have such a much more obvious care and personal care for the children than Anasea. And I think that becomes an obvious disconnect between those two characters. And I think what we're going to learn, and this is kind of what I'm hoping for, is that Anasea is the one who struck the deal with the devil. She's the one who used dark powers in collaboration with the Sith to create this vergence, this experience to like maybe pass the consciousness of one to another, hence the duplicate consciousness. And I had this real sense of danger that the reason Soul thrust the lightsaber through her chest was that like I thought she was about to harm May. Like for a second, like I thought she was about like to possess her.
What was happening there? That also on the editing point was really confusing.
Yeah.
What was she doing, and why was May starting to dissolve?
That's right. She was. Yeah.
May was starting to dissolve. So they were both becoming, liquid air. That raises a lot of questions.
And that's where we get to the I think if the piece here is that she has somehow replicated her consciousness to then possess or take over those of her children. That's some dark stuff, and I think that would explain, I think, a lot of the dynamics with the Coven, but also with the Jedi.
Yeah. I think that's the wrap for this episode. Episode 7 of the Acolyte. We've learned that life is full of gray area. There are different perspectives that matter when you're putting together an investigation of what happens in a story. We already knew this. We knew that there were going to be reveals, but people kind of acted going into this show like there's all these unanswered questions. Yeah, that's the point. That's the literal structure of this show. There's a lot of gray area, and I don't think that this show has been dogmatic as it was initially build in its criticisms of the Jedi. The Jedi are just real people operating in the real world, which is messy.
Mm-hmm.
And they have good intentions, and they're doing the best that they can. And also May, much to my dismay, did not try to burn the building down. I liked hating May. I think May is a nasty little child. And I enjoyed hating her. And now I am angry that she accidentally dropped the firebomb and lit the building on fire. So my narrative and contempt for her has been undermined.
Yeah. I fear that, and here's my parting shot on this episode and the Acolyte in general. My fear is that I don't mind morally gray Star Wars. It's been around before. It's been done well. It's been done not so well. This series has really struggled with doing it well. But a lot of it, I think, really comes down to poor writing, poor character motivation, and poor editing. Like a lack of clarity on some of these things, I think, make it really difficult. And what the opportunity you have, and still have, depending on how they wrap this up. But I'm not super optimistic. I'm not gonna lie, but we'll see how this goes. The opportunity you have is to very clearly show from a narrative, editing, and dialogue way is that like the witches, bad guys. Is it clean? No, but like when you have this force cult, literally kind of all sitting and chanting together to possess multiple people against their will and attempt to murder or force a Jedi to murder his fellow Jedi Knights, when they are objectively not threatening you, and they are coming here for noble intentions and just wanting to make sure the children are safe, like that's your indicator. But the way the series is edited, and I think the takeaway is going to be like the conversation in fandom we'll see on social media tomorrow is going to be like, well, it's muddy and confusing and both are bad, and man, that Torben kid is pretty rash, pretty stupid, which is all true. But I think some of the fundamental, like, hey, that's evil, like that is and I think it's meant to be. It's just I don't know that it comes across as strongly as it could, and I think that would play up the conflict in a way that would make a better story. So I'm really hoping for a little bit more, some oomph in the final episode that clarifies some of these conflicts and character motivations. We'll see.
All right. That's a wrap, Riley.
That's a wrap. Folks, if you don't subscribe to the Substack, it's at geekystoics.com. That's where you can get our weekly newsletter. If you're not subscribed, make sure you do. And if you enjoy the podcast here on YouTube, iTunes, wherever you listen to it, please leave a rating and review and share it with your friends and Star Wars fans. Here's our goal. And you know it from listening to this episode. We like to talk about Star Wars with some nuance, some honest, critical, and yet constructive nuance. And it's very rare out there. So we try our best. Hope you enjoyed it. Stephen, I'm missing anything? Want to tell the folks where to find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Stephen Kent X, and looking forward to seeing your subscription over at geekystoics.com.
Until next time, may the thread be with you.
How dare you? Delete that.